Hello, and welcome to Wyverns and Weirdos Polaris, D&D Podcast set in the World of Fierlor. I am your Dungeon Master Darby, and joining me as always are Eddie playing Tibble, Mitch playing Nerys, Laura playing Rue, Jake playing the Fishman, Joe playing Alton, Emily playing 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧, and Zoe playing Loren. Let's jump into it. Where we last left off, the crew of the Polaris took their prisoner to their ship, although not without some difficulty when Vatrej slipped out of the, let's be honest, poorly tied ropes and tried to escape, although was immediately tackled by the Fishman and recaptured. After they were left on the ship, Alton and Tibble had a bit of a discussion about Alton's past. And that's basically where we pick back up, with Tibble and Alton and anyone else who is going to be involved going to interrogate / negotiate with Vatrej Crowe.
Tibble, when he gets back to the ship, I think he will, just as a quick aside, he'll say to Alton, I'll join you down there in a minute, lad. Let the others know that we'll begin shortly.
Of course, will do.
And he's going to go and find Rue. Rue, lad, I'd like to apologise for getting you involved today. Thank you for protecting Alton.
Rue doesn't quite incline their head to look down at Tibble, but their eyes sort of flicker in recognition while Tibble was talking. Of course, Alton was injured. Is he faring well?
I think a bit worn out, as we all are.
Understandable in the situation.
Rue, are you okay?
When you have a prisoner to interrogate, may I ask what you're going to do with them?
At this stage, I'm not too sure. I would very much like to be able to release this prisoner or pass them on, be it to my employers or to someone else. But I have things I wish to discuss with you. If you have time, either later tonight or early tomorrow before I go to make my report.
I would very much like to be present for this interrogation.
Are you feeling up to it?
I have noticed that there have been no healers sent, so I would very much like to heal, as I'm not sure if it's the same with you. But for bird folk, if there's a harpoon through their shoulder, they are in great physical distress, if not mental. And I would very much like to ease that pain.
I can send for 𝗖𝗧, Rue. My intent is not to grievously harm this person, and I would not have done that had circumstances been different. Perhaps this is something we can discuss later.
I don't know how to describe how Rue's physicality is currently, but the lights kind of shunt a little bit and waver behind their eyes and in between the seams of their armor. And they just take another look over Tibble and then nod. I see. I hope it goes well then.
Of course.
And they turn back towards the ocean and stare out across the waves.
Tibble scampers down from the banister. He heads towards the stairs to lower deck, turns and takes one last look at Rue before scampering down to where the interrogations are taking place. Tibble will send for 𝗖𝗧 On his way, he will grab her, interrupt whatever meditations or potions that she was brewing, and bring her along.
Before everyone arrives, Nerys is in the room with this individual, and Nerys just sort of sits him down in the bed, and I'm assuming Fishman is outside at the door. So Nerys will sit this individual down in the bed and will take a seat opposite. Just kind of look at him for a little bit, kind of like with a cocked head. Can Nerys just sort of just do a general vibe check on this individual? I think we know everything that Nerys is about to find out already, but just to be, just to see.
Roll me an insight check.
That's a dirty 20.
He's a little hard to read, but very much holds himself in a way that suggests that he has had a good amount of training, particularly in regards as well to anti-interrogation tactics.
Nerys, just with the cocked head, after a little moment, just places a hand up over his mouth, and he's going to cast message, and we're going to have a conversation entirely in our own heads. You are much more than we give you credit for, aren't you?
A little.
That's it's very kind of you, but there are not many who can resist my magics. And you did so incredibly handily. Who do you represent? You are not working alone, are you?
I work for the Pact Guard.
Has Nerys heard of the Pact Guard before?
Roll me a history check to determine how much.
Oh, Nerys is good at these. That's not a great roll. That is a 16.
16. They're an official agency, probably akin to something like the FBI. They're dealing with stuff that isn't the jurisdiction of a particular island. They're dealing with something that is within the jurisdiction of the entire Iyalak Pact.
So what you're saying is kind of a big deal. It appears that I'm sure there is some form of misunderstanding here.
I do not think there is as much of a misunderstanding as you believe there to be.
Well, I don't, if you'll forgive me, I don't believe there's a misunderstanding on your part. We have obviously not understood who you represent or what your intentions are. I'm certain that once this is brought to light, when our captain hears of this, you will be released and you will return back to your masters, and you will remember that what I'm trying to say is your mission here was not against a group, it was against an individual. No?
Okay.
Perfect. Has your mission changed in light of recent events?
Currently, no. Yeah, however, there may be discussions.
Is there anything that can be done to mitigate any damages?
Are you attempting to bribe me?
I am not. I am attempting to secure the safety of the crew that I serve with.
You wish to secure the safety of your crew? Then I suggest you hand over the fugitive.
Unfortunately, the fugitive is not mine to give. However, you will speak with the captain, who this fugitive, I believe until potentially quite recently, serves under. Anyway, I just wanted to inform you that there has been a gross misunderstanding on our part on who you are and what your intentions are. And on behalf of those who were responsible, I would like to extend my apologies to your treatment, and I do hope that after some preliminary questions from the captain, you will be released and you will be returned back to wherever you are based, and we can open up a conversation with whoever has issued this order to sort out this mess.
You are not like the others. You carry yourself differently.
No one is like anyone. Everyone is unique.
You know what I mean. You're far more methodical. Everything considered. Nothing left to chance. It is an interesting trait.
It has kept me alive, as I am sure it has you.
So Fishman would probably knock on the door because it's been quiet for some time in there, like not a sound.
Mhm.
So he'd probably knock on the door and probably say, "Is everything good in there? It's been very quiet."
Everything is fine. We are waiting for the captain.
I see them coming now.
Yeah, and it's probably about this time the captain attends with 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 in tow, and he gives a nod to the fishman. "Thank you, lad. Shall we?"
I believe they're all ready for us.
Tibble opens the door and allows the others to walk in before him, and then when he walks in, he shuts the door and he gives a nod to Nerys. "Good afternoon, Mr. Crowe. Thank you for agreeing to participate in a discussion here. 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧, attend to the man's wounds, would you?"
So 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 just does a quick cure wounds at 3rd level. So 14 points of healing you get.
For reference as well, when the captain has entered the room, Nerys has stood up from his chair, nodded in return to the captain, and he's backed away into a little corner, sort of next to the door, and he's crossed his arms and he's sort of bowed his head a little bit, and he's now watching.
"What exactly has led you to this situation today?"
A number of years ago, a regiment was sent to Tavamar. There we were to deal with a criminal organization there, the Crimson Lakes. We were mostly able to deal with them, but there were some loose ends. My boss, Captain Priestspringer, does not like loose ends.
No, I can completely understand that, and it is well within your duty to be doing your job. However, can I ask you what evidence you have here to be shooting at a member of my crew in the middle of the streets in broad daylight?
We had an informant.
Is there hard evidence that that informant is true to their word?
We have several witnesses who saw his testimony under a zone of truth.
If you are not willing to bring the proper paperwork before shooting at someone in broad daylight...
Oh, I will make sure next time I have all of my I's dotted and my T's crossed.
Wonderful. Now I have spoken to young Alton, who is and will remain to be a member of my crew under the heads of the Hydra, and I will be making a full report to the Hydra of what has occurred here today. Unfortunately, without proper paperwork, nor proof of Alton being who you say that he is, I cannot let you kill or take this man today.
It is very apparent that you would not allow that at this stage.
Now, can I suggest next time you start shooting people in the middle of the street, Mr. Crowe, that you allow any form of discussion to happen before I have to gun you down with a harpoon? If one of my crew came into your offices or saw you wandering down the street and started shooting at someone in your company, how would you react, Mr. Crowe?
I would bring the full force of the law down upon them.
Wonderful. And on this ship, Mr. Crowe, I am the law. I may not have been the law in those streets at that time. However, I am acting captain of all of these here crewmates. And as their acting captain, it is in my best interest to protect them. Now, I had not heard of this Kalain Peacebringer. So I think that you will appreciate that you invoking the word of someone who I did not know and have not met is not much of an explanation.
That is reasonable. What a pact guard. I understand your reticence.
Now, it is not my intention to keep you held captive here today. However, I think you will understand that I will have 2 of my crew accompany you. Do you have an office space here, Mr. Crowe?
Anyone who is anyone has an office on Ankathea. You should know that.
I will have 2 of my employ escort you back to your place of employ. And you are not to step foot on my ship until such a time this Kalain Peacebringer can bring me hard evidence. Do I make myself clear?
As mud. Will my rifle be returned to me?
Your what?
My rifle, my weapon.
Aye, once you have stepped foot back into your place of employ, all of your belongings will be returned to you, Mr. Crowe. Do any of my officers have anything they wish to discuss or ask of Mr. Crowe before we send him on his merry way to his employers?
Well, as the accused and the victim here, I just wanted to express my sincere apologies that you could not spill more blood today. I know half a city surely was not enough. Wonderful to hear, too, that you're part of the Pact Guard when Amara is in fact a patchless Isles. You should have no authority there. But, well, that's the way of the world, I suppose.
Well, Mr. Crowe, I would love to hear from your superior at some point with all of the documentation. Fishman Nerys, would you be so kind as to accompany our esteemed guest back to his place of employ, or shall I make other arrangements?
I am happy to escort this individual.
Enjoy.
Wonderful. Alton, 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧, you're dismissed.
He just flips in the bird as he leaves.
So, I take it Nerys and Fishman are escorting Vatrej into town?
A little bit. We're not going all the way back to his employment. I'm assuming he's not going to tell us where his place of employment is.
No.
So it'll be sort of just like into town, maybe for a couple of minutes. As we get to near center of town, Nerys is going to turn to the individual who I'm assuming we don't have tied up at this point.
I would imagine so.
And Nerys will just sort of half turn as we're walking and say, well, thank you very much for your time. If I may recap on everything that the captain was saying. If you are to bring some form of paperwork from your organization to the captain, we would be more than willing to cooperate with you and your organization for the transfer of this alleged fugitive, if all the paperwork is correct. I would be more than happy to act as an intermediary for these negotiations, if you so choose. Please also extend our sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding, and I'm certain the captain was very pleased to make your acquaintance. Well, thank you for your time, and goodbye.
Fishman gives you the foulest of eyes right now as well.
He just leaves.
Then Nerys will turn to Fishman and say, what do you expect to happen? Do you not agree with trying to patch things up? Do you want to bring the wrath of the Pact Guard down on the entire crew?
Absolutely not. But I don't believe we should simply hand them over. Do we know the whole story?
Do you truly believe that the captain will hand Alton over? Just with a bit of paperwork, at least we have bought a bit of time.
Exactly. But this whole situation has thrown me off quite a bit. And I'll be honest, I don't know how to feel at the moment.
I don't think a lot of us know how to feel about this. This is not a normal conversation. We are heading back to the ship at this point. I'm trying to do what is best for the entire crew of this vessel. If
I would just like to know that you have Alton's best interests at heart.
I have complete faith in the captain, and the captain has complete faith in Alton.
All I need to hear.
I apologize if you do not understand my motives. But I am trying to buy as much time as we can, so that this situation, whatever it may be, we can find out what is happening, and we can solve it without more bloodshed.
Agreed.
Perfect.
Fine.
Fine. And we march back in silence, each one trying to go a little bit faster than the other. As we get towards the evening, Nerys is going to remember a little conversation that he had with a stranger on the way back from the tavern. That was, the meeting is going to happen on board the ship tonight. Nerys is mildly concerned, but also his curiosity takes over, as his lust for knowledge is stronger than really anything else. And Nerys is going to just quickly go up to his room. He's going to pull out a couple of books, flick through a couple, one to the page that has this individual seemingly controlling the weather on it, which appears to be sketched rather hurriedly in a book full of sketches and words and descriptions that are all kind of half finished, almost like hurried. And there's a little date on the top, which is dated almost a year ago on this image. And he's going to look at that, and he's going to pull out another little diary and flick through sort of his personal log. And he'll go to the night that we were attacked by elemental being. He'll read through that description, and then he's going to kind of grimace a little bit and pull out his divining orb, and he's going to focus on it. And he's going to think about earlier on when Nerys, Rue, and Fishman were walking along the docks trying to find an apple, and we came across a certain ship. He's going to think on that, and he's going to close his eyes, and then when he opens it again, there's this sort of blue hue to them, which is reflecting off of this divining orb as that smoke that's in slowly writhes and turns into the hallway on the Red Phoenix. And Nerys casts clairvoyance and begins to watch what is happening.
Well, I guess the question is, it's about sunset-ish. Well, is Cerys back aboard yet? Or is she still busy?
She's probably just strolling back onto deck now.
So Nerys probably at some point will catch a glimpse of her. This hallway would probably be like down the center of the ship, so not really anywhere with windows. But in the distance, after a minute, two of just general ship ambience, you hear this sound on the deck, like this loud thump and splash. And then you hear a little pseudo-dragon whine. All right. I know I was under for longer than you expected. You should be used to this by now, buddy. And then you hear the footsteps go across the deck. And just, all right, just let me pick up my shoes. Down the steps. And then from the entryway, you see Loren. And before I describe Loren, Nerys, you're alone, yeah?
Nerys is alone in his quarters, yes.
Could I ask everyone except Nerys and Cerys to take their headphones off? You see Loren, barefoot, in what you think could be her underwear, maybe swimwear, a fantasy bikini of a sort. And for some reason, the first thing you notice is you'd maybe never realize she wears a headband all the time, and you realize you've never seen her ears before. I don't know what you'd assumed about her, maybe that she is human and self-conscious about her ears, or maybe elven from the color of her eyes, since they're not natural, or maybe even changeling from the way her features shift. But it's none of those. They're fins. Iridescent fins that poke out of her hair, long and wet. When she shakes it back, you see, normally hidden by her high collar, gills. Scales down her shoulders and her collarbone. You see on her hands, where normally her gloves cover, you see deep blue and green, almost watercolor, that wraps around her wrists, almost like bruises, but it's not. There's slight webbing at the bottom of her fingers. Her toenails, like her fingernails, are almost like talons, and she is covered in patches of scales that go from her sun-tanned skin tone to almost clear to this iridescent blue and green and yellow. And you think this is familiar. You're a traveled man. This is familiar, but you're not sure why. And you think, and then she speaks to 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 in primordial. Words you know, words you knew she could speak because she spoke primordial once in Ascending, but you hear her just muttering to him nothings, the way you baby talk a cat. And all at once it hits you. She's Triton, but not... You've never seen a Triton that looks like her. They're always fully green. They're always fully scaled. They are fish people. Something about her isn't right. Isn't fully Triton. And she walks past. And as she walks past, you see the 2 feather tattoos on her forearms that you know you have seen in visions and in real life. She has the 2 falling around each other on each forearm. And on her back, between the scales, on her shoulder blades, where wings would sit, there are 2 more black feathers. And you also see over her right shoulder, deep, fresh scarring, like a shark bite. Over one side and down the back, where the scales are broken, pulled apart, wrenched in some places, it looks painful. You think back on the way she didn't seem to care about the fact she was bitten. She cared about being seen. And she walks past. And she goes into her room. And you hear her speaking in primordial some more. And after maybe another 2 minutes, she walks back out, fully dressed, buttoning the collar on her shirt until she looks as human as she ever will. And she says to 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧, "We'll have guests soon. Gotta look presentable. Now come on, buddy. Were you going to be good for me during this meeting, or are you going to cry again the whole time? Come on. Let's go make an impression." Then she walks back past onto the deck.
Yeah, so Nerys is going to sort of look at that and snap back out. Stare at that crystal ball with the smoke kind of roiling around. Just sit back in his chair. This just got very interesting. And then after that, I think Nerys is going to just sort of pocket the divining orb in the little his special pouch in his satchel. He'll put those 2 books plus a couple of others in the satchel as well. And he's going to make his way out onto the... Is anyone on the deck, out of curiosity?
I think Tibble might be.
Tibble and Rue?
Rue is also there, yes.
Okay.
Still in the same place that they were before the interrogation occurred.
Tibble's probably on the other side of the deck for now, probably just coming out of his quarters, which I believe are off the top deck.
Nerys will sort of shoulder his bag and kind of pull up the collar of the coat that he's wearing and look at Tibble and just kind of cast message, just because it's a little bit too far of a distance to like yell, and Nerys doesn't really want to do that. And Nerys will just say, I am, as previously discussed, I am going to have a conversation with Loren about the elementals that we encountered. She may be able to provide some assistance on that matter.
Tibble gives him a nod. You get the message back. Can you please send Cerise my apologies for the disruption to our meeting today, and let her know that we will be available for rescheduling whenever suits her. Possibly not in this port, though, given circumstances.
If I interact with Cerise, I will let her know.
You can tell Loren to tell her if need be, as long as it's passed on.
Of course, Captain.
Stay safe.
I will try. However, if you do not hear from me in the next few hours, you know where I will be. But give me a moment at least. I wish to see where this goes.
If you're not back by dawn, we'll be coming to you.
Of course, Captain. And Nerys takes a couple of steps towards the gangplank, and then we'll look over at Rue, who has been quieter than usual since, the incident in the tavern.
They sort of like turn to regard to look at Nerys a bit. The light behind their eyes quite dim.
Rue?
Yes. Quartermaster Nerys?
Nerys is quiet for a little bit, just kind of like regarding Rue. Is there something you wish to talk about?
So Rue kind of like, when Nerys says, is there something you want to talk about? Their like head kind of like turns almost imperceptibly towards the captain and then looks back at Nerys. I'm not sure. Is there something you wish to discuss?
Nerys kind of has, at that, a little bit of a side grin and says, I am not sure.
Oh. We are twins then.
We are twins. Do you wish to come for a walk?
I would love to go for a walk.
Perfect. Well, let us go then. And Nerys will begin to walk down the gangplank onto the dock, and we'll wait for Rue.
Excellent. Rue kind of just like stares out across the sea for a moment longer, and then turns around, stretches in quite an unnatural manner, and looks over at the captain and sort of like tilts their tricorner slightly. Captain?
Tibble does sort of scamper up to her, and I won't interrupt your walk, but if you're not too tired, if you have a moment when you return, come knock on my door. There's something I'd like to discuss with you.
Of course, I will remember.
Enjoy. You'll be in good company. And he
just turns
heads below deck
and follows Nerys.
So, Rue, you don't mind if I call you Rue, do you? I have been calling you Friday for so long.
I don't mind either, if you're comfortable with Rue. I am comfortable with it too. They're both names given to me.
How do you find Ancasia?
Rue kind of like suddenly like sort of straightens up a lot more again, and then sort of seems to like surge with a little bit of like, for like the briefest moment of like multicolored sort of energy just like surges through like the little seams of their body and like through their eyes, and then just like fizzles out again. I like it very much. It is much bigger than where I come from. Perhaps I've been here before, I don't recall. But it is very exciting and it has a great deal of many things. And an opera. And shops. I like it very much. You travel here often, you were saying?
The Polaris does dock here fairly regularly, as this is. If you would say Not exactly our home, although some on the crew would see it as. It is a place that we come to most frequently.
Yes, that's right. You said it was not a home. Why do you ask?
I am just making conversation.
Small talk, true. You're doing a very good job. I appreciate it very much. You were carrying the conversation wonderfully.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I have been reading and studying how to hold conversations because so far all I have been able to do is talk about the weather. I find it does get very repetitive after a while.
What a shame. The weather is always so interesting and so varied and tells you so much about everything.
It does.
Yes.
What do you think of the weather? Just in general, the concept of the weather.
It is interesting. It can brighten and dampen the day, depending on how things go. It was rainy earlier today, and now... well, it is not as rainy, I suppose. But I find the weather very interesting. Is that a sort of magic you're investigating? Or is it just a form of interest, or more small talk? Either way, you're doing very well.
I believe it is a combination of all three.
All three.
I'm trying to make what some people call a segue, I think is the correct terminology.
I see.
I am not... I should inform you before we get too far away from the ship. This is not just a normal walk. I am actually walking with intent. I have a meeting with... Do you remember the individuals that we met at the tavern just before?
Yes, the meeting.
Yes.
Cut short.
It was indeed cut short. Nerys is going to start to continue talking, and then he's going to sort of like twig on something. How do you feel that went?
Rue sort of, in a sense, pulls himself back together. I think that went very poorly. I suppose, overall, no one died. That could be considered a win, but I would consider it a loss, if I am speaking frankly. I'm not so good at this. Perhaps I need to borrow a walk.
That's fine. Knowing, firstly, you can always speak the frank with me. That is perfectly fine. Knowing what you know about how that went, if that situation occurred in the future exactly the same, what would you do to change it? How would you want it to change?
It is difficult to change the future almost as much as it is to change the past. The present's much easier.
There's no real thing as the present. If you focus on the present, it becomes the past.
You are very profound. I suppose if I were to change something, perhaps I could have found a way to quell the situation. Perhaps I needed more apples. I had made assumptions about this crew and the people on board, and I saw a great deal many things that I was not expecting. Perhaps if I had been more assertive, as the fishman says, who also says that he does things because the captain asks, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But at least no one died, I suppose. This is presuming, of course, that you did not murder the captive wherever you were leading him to when you left the boat before. The ship, my apologies, I saw your eye twitch there.
Thank you. Well, you would be happy to know that we escorted him into town safely and he was released without harm.
Good.
You know, loyalty is a funny thing. There are those who would follow orders without question, believing that to be loyalty. And there are those who would question every order and also believe that to be loyalty. Both are very different, but both are all very true in their own way. Loyalty is a funny umbrella. There are many things it can hide underneath it.
This is true.
I think it is important to get to know everybody. As much as you can, obviously. But it is much more important to know yourself.
Then I am at a very great disadvantage. But this is good advice.
There's always the opportunity to learn.
I suppose. And Rue kind of like turns a little bit, and again, like their eyes like flick that red just for a moment, as I imagine we're still just wandering along these docks. They pause for a moment, and then the light dims again. You know what I was accused of murdering one who I grew up with as a brother. I cannot remember what happened. Everyone on the island treated me as a murderer, a villain for 5 years, and I still don't know if Tibble came to my island and believed me with no question. This was great comfort. I thought, this is a good person. Fishman reached out, has been kind, offered alternatives of apples. This, I thought, is a good person. Yourself, you remind me very much of someone I once knew. I am undecided, but I believe you can be a good person. I cannot speak of what I saw happen with Alton, but I had to directly intervene. A civilian would have been shot to death otherwise. I then heard the good captain order a shoot to kill from Alton. When I asked why we were chasing a fleeing person instead of healing injured, Fishman responded, "Captain's orders." Fishman claimed earlier that we tried to reason with the inspector, as did many others, but I only saw bullets. It was spoken again and again of treating the prisoner worse, of how it was the prisoner who tried to shoot down an innocent person. But that is all I saw of the Polaris. These are observations. I'm thinking about what they mean.
I appreciate your thoughts on what happened today. And I think it is important to think on them as much as you can, but not let them rule you. Anyway, the walk that we are on, do you remember the lovely people that we met in the tavern?
Yes.
I am going to interact with one of them, the ones that I got along with very well, and we are going to talk about the weather.
That's right, and having learnt about your favourite places, you don't like her very much, so that's very good sarcasm.
Oh, you are learning very well.
You like her tonight.
I am doing no such thing, I will be honest. I think both of us are aware that we do not necessarily like each other. I believe Loren likes me, but not in that way. I believe she likes the effects that she has on me, which is torment.
She seems to enjoy annoying you. I have picked this up. It is not hard to see. You do appear to be very easy to annoy.
Well, to a point. I believe it is easier with Loren.
Yes.
And I believe we will continue this conversation when we are leaving, for we have just arrived.
We have too.
I am not entirely sure on what you would like your intentions to be, whether you would like to come aboard or whether you would like to explore the town. It is entirely up to you. I will leave the choice to you. I will not be issuing any orders.
If it's all right with you, I would like to come on board. If that is permissible of the others.
I'm sure it will be.
I will not interrupt, of course. The torment.
You are free to speak. You're not here at anyone else's will other than your own. Well, shall we begin the torment then?
Let us begin the torment. What wonderful weather for it.
Absolutely. Let us begin the torment.
Oh, goody, she was listening.
Loren appears at, the prow of the ship. just leans over the side. You were talking quite loudly.
My apologies.
I just think you have incredibly large ears.
Well, that's mighty rude of you.
Well, we're having a conversation between the two of us. You did not interrupt to say that you were listening until right now, and that is quite rude of you, actually.
Pity. So, Rue's your bodyguard tonight? Good evening, Rue.
Good evening. And they'd like tilt their tricorn very politely at Loren and do almost sort of like, it's a very strange configuration, but you can see it's like it's the one foot hooked in front of the other, like a tiny curtsy, it looks like.
Loren does like a little head tilt in return and goes, can the captain be expecting Fishman to be back up, hiding in the water? Or should I tell her it's a no-go for the evening and she can just go to bed?
Unfortunately, Fishman was incredibly busy. I was intending just to come. However, I saw Rue and thought that we should have a wonderful conversation in the moonlight.
And now you're here. Welcome aboard the Red Phoenix. She's going to take them to, like, I guess, like, a little, like, meeting room that we would have, like a general meeting area. Would Cerise be there, or would she be in her cabin?
She's probably sitting there with her feet up on the table.
Captain, 2 of them tonight. Unfortunately, not the one you were after. As she strolls on in.
Good evening.
Good evening, Captain.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. It is a nice ship.
That really pained you to say it, didn't it?
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of paintwork that needs doing. There's a bit of peeling. Some of the wood doesn't look like it's been sanded properly, and there's a little patch on the main decks that I thought that does not have any tar on it. So, you know, there are always improvements. But in the main look of it, it is a nice ship.
Ouch. Brave little wizard, aren't you?
Just observant. So is this where we will be conducting our meeting, or?
Of course. I mean, it's not like we'd take you anywhere like the war room. That'd be stupid.
Nerys is very quiet.
So feel free to take a seat. Either of you. Anyone may come and go as they please. It is a general conversation.
Nerys will take a seat.
That's where we'll just stand there. Look at one of the chairs and just be like, oh, I'm not going to do that to them. And then just like primly sort of like put their hands in front of themselves, very tucked in close.
There is a jug of something, some kind of beverage on the table, and Cerise does have a goblet in her hand and she is drinking.
Loren sits down opposite Nerys and, much like the captain, kicks her feet up onto a chair. And she goes, so, Nerys, the storm. Where would you like to begin?
Well, why don't we begin at the start? How did you... What interest have you as controlling the storm?
It's not an interest. It's me blood. I told you, you book cut types. You call us storm sorcerers. People born into the storm. If I don't utilize it, if I don't control it, then what is it? Wasted potential.
So how did you learn to control it?
Trial and error. A lot of error. And she winks with her scarred eye.
What What sort of storms can you manage? I know that you did a little trick with the rain earlier. You can make it rain in a small area and make it stop. That is a very quaint trick. Is there more that you can do?
Trick. Right.
Sorry, a magic performance.
Right. Well, a certain control of wind, a certain control of the waves. Can cause a tidal wave, can walk on water. I cannot yet muster my own storm, but I'm working on it. Certainly have a knack for thunder and lightning, as you well know, and that's only getting better. The type of things you're talking about, Nerys, magical storms, are you asking me about the people who control them or about them in general? There's many different kinds.
A little bit of both, to be honest. Let us say hypothetically there was a tiny storm that was to hypothetically appear and hypothetically act on its own almost sentiently. Would that be something that would be created, or would it simply just exist?
If you're thinking about magic storms that just tend to exist, there's a lot of magic in this world. Gets mixed up, moves around a lot. Sometimes magic hits against the wrong kind of magic and creates storms. It's like a natural disaster. The tectonic plates just made of glitter, if that's an easy way to imagine it.
It is not, but continue.
There are areas, creatures, that bring the storm with them. But you'd know if you ran into them.
And what if we did run into one of them? But like a smaller version? Hypothetically, of course.
I think we're talking about two different things.
We may be.
You don't run into small versions of what I've seen.
Nerys is about to make a rebuttal and then kind of pause when Loren says what I've seen. And then we'll just keep going. Perhaps a different track then. You are aware of, I believe, elemental beings.
You mostly see ones made of like air or water, but you get those ones of like earth and fire and all that. Don't they fall through like little portals or travel here and then they can like make themselves look like people? Have little offspring, make more little elementals. Sometimes if they have little offspring with a person, they can make like a genasi for that sort. Like that famous one, the fire one.
Would something like that be able to be controlled?
The same way you or I could be. They're sentient, ain't they? You control a person, you can control an elemental.
But they are the pure element.
They have enough sentience to create. They have enough sentience to control. Someone's controlling them. It dictates mind altering. Rather than some kind of cosmic, all-powerful storm daddy that can tell them what to do.
Not entirely sure I like the terminology of storm daddy.
Then I will use it constantly.
That is not the intention, but completely foreseeable.
Oh, you finally foresaw something correctly. Good on you.
Why must you hurt me?
Why must you make it so easy?
There are... my magic is incredibly focused on certain... it is very difficult to be aware of my surroundings and also be aware of the future. And not just the future, but every future. It is a definite challenge.
Right. So are you telling me I should ask my captain to leave the room so that way you're not outnumbered, only outpowered then?
You think you are power? Power is an interesting concept that you bring up.
I'm sorry, which of us just said that they have a very narrow field of work, and which of us can stop the feckin' rain?
It's wonderful that you can stop the rain, but I can also stop the rain, and I don't need to use any magic with that. I have an umbrella.
Ha! You're very funny.
That was a good one.
You know, I am very glad that I brought you.
You're very welcome.
He's not wrong.
Captain?
However, you must have a very narrow view of power then.
I don't believe I do. I don't look at power as a way to beat an opponent. I look at power almost as if you would look at a storm. It is constantly changing, constantly evolving, and you must stay on top, or else you will drown.
That's the first reasonable thing you've said all day.
I have said so many reasonable things. Do you not listen to anything that I say?
No, I don't, actually.
I spent so long just thinking of things to say that people will be like, wow, look at the profound. But and no one pays any attention.
So you're a try-hard.
I'm not a try-hard. I do not have the panache. I'm not interested in
so
that
you
at
admit
all.
you don't have panache? Oh my
I'm not
God,
interested
Nerys,
in
we're finally
panache.
on the same
There is
page.
no, I tried to use the panache once and it didn't work.
How did you try to use panache?
I told you not to look at my hoo-hoo, and then and everyone else did.
I definitely don't want to look at your feckin' hoo-hoo.
With the lightning and the flashing lights and the hoo-hoo. It was literally just a few hours ago.
You know what, Nerys, for you that really was panache. I'll give you credit for that. Just because it didn't work doesn't mean you didn't do a good job.
No, but then I feel like I've just wasted so much energy because I'm constantly thinking of the one-liners, and it's going to be so cool, and I'm going to say, hey, don't look at this, and I'm going to do something and it's going to work, and then it doesn't work, and then it's such a waste of time.
You don't really have anyone to talk to on that ship, do you?
I can talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not the topic of conversation.
No, you're the one who sort of deviated a little there with your existential breakdown, which I'm sure you can save for next time you and Alton talk to one another. Do you have any more questions relevant to me?
Yes, I do.
I'd love to hear them.
And he's just going to sort of look around the room. What's the room look like?
Captain?
So it's quite a small room, sort of to the side, one side of the ship. Again, as with everything else on the ship, it is all dark wood. The table and chairs are enough to fit maybe 8 people at a time. And there is sort of shelving or cupboards all around the room that are shut. You can't see what is inside.
Okay. I do have a question.
All right.
I've been wanting to, it doesn't relate to you to start with, but it will in the end. I've been wanting to get a, well, as you know, I am very fair-skinned. I am wanting to get some form of a tattoo And I was wondering if you could recommend somewhere that could do a tattoo of some description.
You don't seem the type, but I could recommend a place or two.
But I mean, normally I'm not the type just to put ink on my skin because that would be panache and that would be inappropriate. But I am all for random magics and the ability to perhaps use magic through one tattoo. And I believe
tattoos.
You may be well versed in that.
Yes, I am. But unfortunately, the artist that gave me these is no longer around. I can recommend some other places that some of the crew go to.
That's fine. I'm more interested in your tattoos anyway. What, out of curiosity, what do they do?
Occasionally, when I channel elements of the storm, they move. They're part of me becoming more powerful, same as my staff. They're sort of connected inherently to my magic.
So it is the tattoos that give you power, not your blood.
No. More like the tattoos act as a sort of manifestation, in the same way the orb on my staff does. Except where if you took my staff away, I'd have to start looking for components. The tattoos add a bit more flair.
Nerys is going to stare at... he's trying to formulate a sentence. And he's absent-mindedly going to stare at the arm that had the tattoo that he saw in his vision. When your tattoo rotates or moves or shifts, do you control that or does it control you?
Let me ask you a question. When you breathe, do your lungs control you or do you control them?
I am not afraid of my lungs, Miss Hartwiller.
What are you implying, Solalanti? What have you seen?
I've seen enough, I think. Nerys will lean back in his chair. And he sort of lets his arms drop down to his side. He might prop one up just on a leg and the other one will sort of hang down, just sort of next to his satchel. You are aware. You have made sure to inform me that you are aware that I can see glimpses into the future every now and then. When I so choose. You have also informed me that sometimes it does not work. Sometimes, however, it does. Miss Hartwiller, I do have to ask you a question. Have you ever seen yourself die?
No. Have you?
Every single day. There are scenes that play out in my head. Scenes that depict what may happen, or what may currently be happening in a different timeline. I'm not sure exactly how it works. But I can see sometimes I can see everything. And that knowledge, no matter how grounding it might be, sometimes I have the opportunity to change what I see and turn it from a certainty to a maybe. Sometimes seeing myself die, feeling myself die, is an opportunity just to change the future so that I don't. But sometimes it is an opportunity to learn. I'm sure you remember what happened when the Red Phoenix docked with the Polaris, and you attempted to take... Don't want to say you attempted to take command, because I'm not entirely sure that was your intentions. But
I
you
do
bought
remember. I turned you into lightning lure.
You did, and then I turned you into a moth looking at a lamp. There was an opportunity for learning there. And I learned that sometimes you're not in full control of yourself.
There are creatures that bring the storm wherever they come. Creatures of fable, of fate, that bring death and destruction and calamity wherever they go. You might have heard of them. They're called sirens. And the reason I have this blood in my veins is one of them took it upon themselves to kill me, mother, giving birth to me. Shipwrecked us and tried to drown the lot of us. I don't know what kept her at bay that day. My father says she died. I don't think so. That siren left a mark on me. Left, and her eyes fall to her tattoos. These marks on me. Some call magic a blessing. This is a curse. You say there are futures where I can't control myself? It's because of that monster marking me. So, I try to control it, control around it, do what I can to keep it at bay. And one day, that monster will die on the end of my spear. And I may lose my magic, or I may lose my life. But I will be in control. So yes, Nerys Solalanti, there are futures where I can't control myself. They'll get fewer and far between. And there are far more futures where I win.
Nerys, throughout this conversation, towards the end of that, for the first time this whole conversation, he does drop his eyes down and looks at the table instead of at Loren. Thank you for sharing. I do apologize about that.
No problem.
This has been a very eventful conversation. Thank you very much for your hospitality for the both of you, and we'll turn and give a nod to the captain. I believe we should be going now.
I believe you should.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for yours. Rue, pleasure seeing you.
Oh, yes, same to you, and my apologies.
What for?
It is an unkind start to life. I wish that had not befallen upon you.
Well, you cannot change the past. Can change the future.
This is true. You're right. Rue inclines their head at Nerys and then turns back to Loren. Regardless, I am sorry to hear this.
Well, that's mighty kind of you, Rue. I appreciate it.
Right, well, door is this way? No?
Absolutely it is. If you go snooping, Iric will get you.
Of course, I have no doubt. Also, Captain, is there anything else you need to discuss with my captain regarding the conversations that was cut short in the tavern?
And I suppose he wants more answers.
The captain was insistent that we make another arrangement at some stage. I'm sure he will be in touch.
We won't be in port for much longer, though.
No, of course, will not be. The weather is much nicer out to sea. Well, have a pleasant evening.
You too. Enjoy your moonlit stroll.
Yes, fair weather to you, and thank you again for the apple. It has been most useful. I will find a replacement apple for you at your next convenience.
Don't worry about it, Rue.
Rue holds up the apple from a little pocket and then just does a little head nod, and then follows Nerys out.
Consider it a gift. Have a good night. And tell Janice I said hello. If he's avoiding me, he's a coward.
And as we leave and we walk along the dock, we get a few ships away. And Nerys turns to Rue with that little half-cocked smile that he has. Says, as I was saying, when there is emotions brought into the conversation, there's so much more that gets revealed.
That was very clever. You even fooled me. And I am sorry for you as well. The death every day is a terrible way to live. If there is something I can do to assist, I am a medic.
Do you think if a mother is attacked during childbirth, that would affect the child? No. Anyway, it is indeed lovely weather for a walk.
It is very lovely weather for a walk. What a wonderful stroll this is.
And
we continue back to the
yes, and as you maybe in the back of your mind continue to ponder the circumstances allegedly surrounding Loren's birth, as arcanely novel as they may seem to you, in particular, Nerys, the two of you make your way back to the ship. And that is where we're going to leave it for this episode. As long as it has been.
See you next week, everyone.
See you next week.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Have a good week.
That was a long one.
I apologize. I've been planning that conversation for about...
No, that was
you've been
so
waiting to do that for a
good.
while.
Yeah. I was half expecting you to cut us off right before it, and I was like, "It's
I know.
start with it
I
next
know.
week. It's fine. I can deal with it." And then we got to do it. And I was like, "Yes."
Finished. You managed to have the scene. It was very good.
I'm really glad you got to it. It was very cool. Very, very cool and very narratively interesting. I also liked Rue being there as well. Oh, sorry. I think you were going to say the same.
Yeah.
We're
Just
just
awkward
hello.
in the corner. Just like,
Rue and
scared
Cerise
bro.
just kind of there.
Yeah, I will say,
Glancing over to each other like,